if we are to summarize it, that every single one of us is nothing other than pure, undiluted awareness, and that awareness is not something which is coming and going. This awareness is our birthright. This awareness is who we are. Everything else is an added, and whatever we may add or subtract from it, we cannot reduce nor add anything to the essence of who we are. So this is the very premise of this work, the first and foremost tenet. In the field of pure potentialities, that this, what we call the world, in all its manifestations, all this is but one unified field where you and I are but just fictitious characters playing its own roles until all this is being recognized for what it is. Fine. Tenets are good. Postulates are good. Doctrinal explanations and positioning ourselves is good. But then comes the work. Then comes what falls under the category of how did we find ourselves in this predicament. This can be spoken in terms of how did we find ourselves in this predicament of here and now, each and every one of us with our own uniquely unfolded story. Likewise, where did we and how did we find ourselves here as a collective, even down to the situation that we are now faced with, because this is real. What is now unfolding is real. So I would, without trying to paint a darker picture, there's no need to do that. It's simply being a realistic in my assessment. We have entered right now, since the start of the pandemic first, whether this pandemic is orchestrated, where it is inflated, where it has its own unfoldment, where it is God-sent, or whether it is devil-sent, the fact remains that we have now entered a real test as earthlings and as human beings. Therefore, from the point of view of my understanding, the spiritual work is no longer a domain of somehow of one's likes and dislikes. It's no longer a luxury to indulge in. It's a matter of pure survival. It's a matter of pure survival. So I have the audacity to speak this from the perspective of how I have learned to understand, based on my own direct experiences, direct insights, also observing the transformations that many people went through in their life, those I've knew for a while, those with whom I've had privilege to be on this journey. And that also includes those with whom I've been privileged to work over a period of time. So the essence of this work is transformational. And the transformation of individual consciousness is nothing less than transformation of the world. Because there's no such thing as individual outside of the world, because this is the primal understanding. We all exist inside each other as the totality of this existence. From the perspective of your subjective experience, which is the one and the only thing there, nothing else is there. Everything else is hearsay. All you have is your subjective experience of your reality. And this is a unique conglomerate of what and how this world is being created in such a way that although it seems uniquely individual, uniquely personal, unique to each and every one of us, it is at the very same time each and every one of us, as it were, a walking universe. It is that we just have simply forgotten that that's what it is. So this work, as you can hear, maybe some of you who are newcomers can hear, overlaps with a lot of maybe known territory where the non-duality, since it took a lot of brilliant minds in the world since, well, now in the third decade, this work has an additional value which views this world, which views individual, not as somehow deductible, non-existent entity on the account of the world being unreal, but contrary to that, each and every human being, each and every creature here is nothing other than the manifestation of consciousness, manifestation of that pure awareness. And the world here is seen as the body of that awareness. So the world and awareness are inseparable. And he talks about awareness and the world, in fact, nothing but categories of the language, which is always limiting, because it is subjected and at the mercy of the fourth level of speech, of which you can learn more if you care to look into some of my discourses on four levels of speech. So the final level of speech, the audible and the thinkable, which is basically all our ideas, ideations, thoughts and impressions that we carry, and what we speak and communicate, is nothing other than reduced consciousness to its fullness of its glory. But whether it is reduced or not, every one of us experiencing this world for what it is, nothing and in any way less than a God experiencing himself, herself, itself as the world. This is yet another tenet of this work. So how is it possible that that can be such a state of affair, let's say in addition or in contrast to the Advaitic postulates upon which all the non-duality is one way or another fashioned? Well, this is where the energetic component, the component of energy comes in. Because the world, in order for it to have fullness and reality, is carried here through that reflective awareness, which is nothing other than the reality of your own self reflected in your own consciousness. In Sanskrit, it is simply known as Shakti. So this field of Shakti, often addressed by us as the field of pure potentiality, is what also another essence of this work. This is where the transformative work is based on. This is where the alchemy of the transformation of human consciousness is a reality which otherwise would have forever been remained into pure possibility without any ways of actualizing it. And we should add to that immediately, this work does not shy away from all the basic methodologies of what this work utilizes whenever the higher measures fall short. That is, it's working at the individual level of each and everyone's requirement. So in addition to the energetic component, which has consciousness as chit, consciousness as that transformational power of the divine feminine, then there is an additional way which is assisted and aided with the multivalent ways of how methodologies for which Tantra is proverbial and very well known. So we do not shy away from varieties of spiritual practices, approaches and methodologies, including psychological self-inquiry, psychological examination, and various forms of meditation, which is all inseparable part of this work on the individual level. So this is in a nutshell what this work comprises of. And soon as we say this, we can now have a greater picture perhaps, or at least in a nutshell have this understanding of what our containers are. Containers are places where we gather to do this work. Because when we gather, we don't just gather to talk about it, nor do we gather just to sit in meditation and twiddle our thumb, hoping the thoughts will go away. The distinctive signature feature of this work is that what all energetic transformation is inseparable from. So it is rich in all that phenomena which displays itself in variety, seldom seen in any other container, dare I say, and you can challenge me on that, if you will, at any time. So our containers, our live immersions, we call them. We consciously chose that term, immersion. We, in fact, customized it to such degree that other now peers in the field began to use this term, which we have introduced in the spiritual vernacular some 10 years ago. We call them immersions. They're not retreats. We're not retreating from anyone. We are immersing ourselves in the field of that Shakti, in the field of these pure potentialities, which at the very same time we weave, form out of the sum total of our vibrations at the very moment we set the intention to come into this work and sit together. Did you hear what I just said? I'm not exaggerating. I want to just go back to it again and let you ponder on that. Not that the energetic component begins at the moment we come into the same building. It actually begins well before we sat together. The energetic component of these immersions begin to form way before we have the chance physically to greet each other in the face. It is being formed already out of that very same sum total of the heartbeats who set the intentions to come and be together. This is why this work is so potent. And once that moment comes, once we have managed to gather ourselves together, then the work begins there and then without a delay. And that means that everything is now being quickened. When we come to these programs, there is this process known as quickening. The time is experienced differently. Perceptions are being altered. The time being experienced differently is not something that I am talking about. This has been referred back to me by our program's participants who have stated that it's as if we exist in a different kind of dimension during the time of these programs. And yet we don't make this into some kind of a curriculum of how to carry this work. It's a pure byproduct of an expanded field. And whenever the field expands, it becomes, as we call it, as we say to it, thicker. It's becoming extremely fine, refined, so it's a kind of strange to call it thicker. But thicker here means that it's so pregnant with that energy. It's so filled with that power of your own self-awareness, that everything begins to be experienced in a way that is, I would say, impossible to recreate in an individual setting, because the sum total is greater than the parts that form it. It's the same principle utilized and at work here at all times. So this is the kind of work that we do, and it is known, regrettably or not, it still remains relatively unexposed. It is only known to those in than no, or those who are in this and have some kind of made some attempts at making some researches, looking up, that is. So we're far from enjoying this, what could come under the category of populist. It's not that our programs are popular, far from it. In fact, if you are to watch the testimonials, the video ones in particular, and I'm referring to video testimonials, you might come across of certain hesitation of some of its participants to express fully about the nature of this work, because A, it seems like we fall short for words, and B, it feels as if it's not something one can brag about easily and just say, oh yeah, you know what, I went there, it's a cool, just come over, you'll have so much fun. Yeah, there's a lot of fun, but it's a real stuff. So therefore, I really welcome those. We don't cut it out, we don't trim it, we don't edit it out. We place it because when people come to this work, it's not a frivolous affair of, oh, I'm going to go and visit my uncle for a weekend, or I'm going to have some, a weekend out to kind of crash down on a yoga mat, and maybe have some kind of little meditation here and there. No, not at all. No. So maybe a word or two about what this work really is accompanied, and I will return to this when I will begin to respond to some of the questions submitted in advance. Because it is energetic in its essence, the work is rich in terms of that what all the quickening is accompanied by, which is at the very same time prompts a release of the deep-seated stresses from the nervous system, which may, prior to that, may not even have been accessed. So in other words, often people report that, like, oh, I've been a facilitator of this or that program, or, I've been a teacher, I've been, I've done this course, that course, I've been teaching courses. And then they come to this work. The first, second day they ask me, do you think I'm done, right? So I'm just gonna sit and partake in everything? Because, I don't need all that stuff that others are doing, because I've done it, right? And to that I always welcome people. Well, if you relax deep enough, we will see. If you can relax and there's nothing left in your system to unload, then we will just enjoy incredible state of bliss and nothing else. Bliss and beatitude, in true sense of that term, because bliss and beatitude is also a very staple accompanying aspect of this work. But let us not rush into conclusions. Let us not make any hasty kind of promises. See how it goes. And surely, day 3 or 4, that very same person, who may have had many programs, even when the word Kriya, of which we will talk later as well, have been there as part of his or her training, they begin to display all this because the body takes over. I didn't just mispronounce myself or something. No, I meant it. The body's intelligence takes over. All that what was there, neatly rearranged everything. I know it all, I understand it all, and I've done my work. Therefore there's nothing for me left to do except enjoying the state of non-duality, may just simply move on to the next level. And this is not uncommon at all. And then people humbly come and they express their gratitude and they express their admiration for the work, that what an amazing thing this is, because I have never thought it's even possible. I thought I'm cooked as an apple pie. You poke it and it's not cooked. Back into the oven. Let's see how cooked you are now. Just, maybe making it a bit of a light-hearted analogy, but there is something to that. So, therefore, whether I like it or not, whether we like it or not as a Sangha, this works. Not that it works, but it certainly works. But this work, this particular work, enjoys an ambivalent reputation. Ambivalent because some people or some people's ideas of enlightenment doesn't fit what is going on in our programs. Because some people come into this work thinking that it's all about understanding and nothing else. Some people have been studying these philosophies, and I am absolutely humbled to admit, the first to admit, that they may teach me a thing or two when it comes to this or that shastra, this or that scripture, this or that sloka. No, I'm all here to learn. But when it comes to the real job of the transformation of consciousness, then it's not at all down to just understanding or just grokking it or just getting it. It is down to full takeover. It's a complete and utter reevaluation on even the cellular structure. It is a complete and utter transformation of all the synaptic connections, if we are to speak of the complexity and completeness of the process. So it's not about what have I figured out that I somehow haven't figured out already. So we humbly accept everyone into this work. Therefore, I find it's very fascinating for me to come to these programs and face complete newcomers who themselves are addressed to themselves as newbies on the path, and people who have been at it for decades, seasoned seekers, seasoned meditators, seasoned meditation teachers. And this is what makes it so beautiful. This is why I take it so humbly, how extraordinary, amazing this is to partake, to be part of it, to witness that, to be in assistance of that process to whatever degree that the mother allows to guide that process and use this as a conduit. So that's what, in essence, this work is about.